The first scream came before the music. It wasn't loud. It wasn't desperate. It was the kind of sound that made an entire courtyard fall silent, because everyone instinctively knew something was terribly wrong. Olivia Bennet froze in the center of the wedding aisle, a clipboard still in one hand as 200 guests turned toward the massive iron gates of the Tuscan estate. A convoy of black SUVs rolled slowly across the ancient stone driveway. 1, 2, 5, 8. Every vehicle was identical, their windows tinted so dark they reflected nothing but the golden evening sky. The string quartet stopped playing in the middle of a note. Champagne glasses remained suspended in midair. Even the bride, moments away from walking toward the altar, forgot to breathe. No invitation had ever been sent to the man arriving now. No one needed to ask who he was. Everyone already knew. Luca Moretti, the Mafia Boss, whose name was whispered only behind closed doors. The man governments couldn't imprison. The man rival families couldn't kill. The man every powerful businessman secretly feared. Olivia had spent 18 months planning the Bellini wedding. Every flower, every candle, every place setting, every second of the evening had been rehearsed until perfection. Nothing in her color-coded schedules included 8 armored SUVs. Nothing prepared her for what happened next. The lead SUV stopped exactly 20 feet from the altar. The engine died. Then, every other vehicle shut off in perfect synchronization. No doors opened. No one moved. The silence became almost unbearable. Finally, the driver's door opened. Men dressed in perfectly tailored black suits stepped out one by one. Each wore an earpiece. Each carried the calm posture of someone who had survived violence too many times to fear it anymore. Within seconds, they formed a protective corridor toward the estate. Only then did their boss appear. Luca Moretti stepped onto the gravel without hurry. He wasn't wearing tactical gear. He wasn't carrying a visible weapon. Instead, he wore a perfectly fitted charcoal suit, a black tie, and polished shoes untouched by the dust surrounding him. His expression remained unreadable. Not angry, not amused, simply controlled. It was somehow more terrifying than rage. Guests lowered their eyes as he walked past them. No one dared speak. No one dared reach for a phone. Even the private security hired for the wedding instinctively stepped backward. Olivia watched every movement carefully. Something wasn't right. If rumors were true, Luca Moretti had spent the last 6 months hunting the groom, Marco Bellini, heir to another powerful criminal family. Everyone expected blood. She expected screaming, gunfire, cows. Instead, Luca walked directly past the groom without acknowledging him. Marco visibly stiffened, preparing for death. Nothing happened. Luca continued walking, straight toward the bride. Sophia stood frozen beneath a white floral arch, her veil trembling in the evening breeze. For one impossible second, Olivia believed he was going to shoot her. Instead, he stopped, placed one hand behind his back, extended the other, and bowed. "May I have this dance?" Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. The bride stared at him, as if reality itself had broken apart. "What? A waltz?" Luca repeated calmly. "Before the ceremony begins." Marco exploded first. "Have you lost your damn mind?" Several of his own bodyguards immediately reached beneath their jackets. The Moretti guards reacted at the exact same moment. Hands hovered over concealed weapons. One wrong movement, and the wedding would become a battlefield. Olivia stepped forward instinctively. "Please." Her own voice sounded impossibly small. "Everyone, stay calm." Nobody listened. Sophia looked from her fiancé to Luca. Then, unexpectedly, she placed her bouquet into Olivia's hands. Without another word, she accepted Luca's hand. Gasps rippled across the courtyard. The quartet remained frozen. Luca glanced toward the musicians. Waltz. The lead violinist hesitated. One look from Luca was enough. The music began. Soft, elegant, completely surreal. Under the fading Tuscan sunset, the Mafia Boss slowly guided another man's bride across the marble courtyard, while two rival armies silently watched, with fingers resting near their guns. Olivia couldn't stop staring. This wasn't humiliation. This wasn't intimidation. It felt personal. Luca never smiled. Neither did Sophia. They danced with perfect precision, as though following choreography rehearsed years earlier. Neither spoke loudly enough for anyone else to hear. Only once did Olivia catch a fragment. Sophia whispered, "You shouldn't have come." Luca answered without looking away, "I never had a choice." A chill crawled across Olivia's spine. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about power. Something far older was happening here. The dance lasted less than 3 minutes, yet it felt endless. When the final note faded, Luca gently released Sophia's hand. He leaned closer, whispered something against her ear. Her face drained of color. Then he stepped back, without another word, without threatening anyone, without touching the groom. He turned around and began walking toward the waiting SUVs. Confusion spread faster than panic. People began whispering. What just happened? Why didn't he kill anyone? Was that some kind of warning? Olivia looked towards Sophia. The bride was trembling, not from fear, from grief, almost recognition. Before Olivia could reach her, a member of the catering staff rushed past, carrying champagne. He accidentally collided with Olivia, sending dozens of seating cards flying into the air. Oh my God! Olivia immediately knelt to gather them. Years of habit took over. She organized names automatically. Then she frowned. These weren't the seating cards she had printed yesterday. Different paper, different handwriting, different table assignments. Someone had replaced them. She quickly searched for the master guest list inside her planning binder. Missing. Completely gone. Her heartbeat accelerated. Impossible. She never misplaced anything. She turned toward the registration table. The young assistant who had been managing guest check-ins only minutes earlier had disappeared. So had 2 private security guards stationed beside the entrance. Olivia scanned the estate. Guests were still talking about Luca. No one else seemed to notice. A cold breeze swept through the cypress trees. Something flashed above. Just for an instant. Sunlight reflecting against glass. Olivia slowly lifted her eyes toward the rooftops surrounding the courtyard. Nothing. Just old stone chimneys. Weathered tiles. Then, another flash. Long, thin, metallic, not glass. A rifle scope. Her breath caught. One rooftop. Then another. Then a third. Hidden silhouette. Perfectly still. Watching the wedding below. Snipers. Her pulse thundered inside her ears. No, this couldn't be real. She looked back toward the main entrance. The Moretti convoy had stopped. The SUVs hadn't left. Every engine remained off. Every bodyguard stood exactly where they had been, waiting, as if they already knew something terrible was about to happen. Olivia's instincts screamed that the dance had never been the real event. It had only been the distraction. Then she noticed something that made the blood drain from her face. Every sniper wasn't aiming at the bride, wasn't aiming at the groom, wasn't aiming at Luca Moretti. Every rifle was pointed toward one person. Here, Olivia couldn't breathe. For a single terrifying second, she convinced herself she had imagined it. She blinked hard and looked again. The rifles never moved. Every scope remained locked on her. Not the bride, not the groom, not Luca Moretti. Here, a wedding planner who had never held a weapon, never broken a law, and certainly never made enemies powerful enough to station professional snipers across the rooftops of a Tuscan estate. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. No, this had to be a mistake. Someone else had to be standing behind her. She glanced over her shoulder. Only a marble fountain and rows of white roses. No one. A gust of wind swept through the courtyard, lifting the edge of her navy blue blazer. One of the snipers adjusted his position. The barrel followed her movement with chilling precision. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, years of working under pressure forced her to stay calm. Panic killed. Observation saved lives. She slowly lowered her head, pretending to gather the scattered seating cards while scanning the estate from beneath her eyelashes. Something was wrong with the security layout. Very wrong. She had personally approved the positions of every guard that morning. There should have been 12 private security officers. She counted. 1, 3, 5. Only 5 remained. The others had vanished. Not fallen, not wounded. Simply gone. Someone had cleared the path long before the ceremony began. Her stomach tightened. This wasn't an attack that had gone out of control. This was a plan. A perfect one. A shadow suddenly fell across the scattered cards. A polished black shoe stopped inches from her hand. Olivia looked up. Luca Moretti. He had never reached the SUVs. Instead, he had silently walked back. He crouched beside her as if they were simply discussing wedding decorations. Around them, guests continued whispering, too distracted by the mysterious dance to notice. Without looking at her, he quietly picked up one of the cards. "Table 7, he murmured. They changed the handwriting. Olivia stared at him. "You noticed?" "I noticed before I arrived." Her eyes widened. "You knew." "I knew enough." His voice remained calm, controlled, almost detached. "Then why did you come?" For the first time, he looked directly into her eyes. "They expected me to." The answer made no sense. Before she could ask another question, Luca slipped the seating card back into her hand. "Do exactly as I say. I don't take orders from criminals." One corner of his mouth almost lifted. Almost. "No. You take orders from survival." He stood before she could respond. As he turned away, something cold brushed against her palm. She looked down. A tiny black communication earpiece rested between the seating cards. He had slipped it into her hand without anyone noticing. Her heartbeat quickened. Was he trying to help her? Or control her? She didn't know which possibility frightened her more. Across the courtyard, Marco Bellini finally exploded. "What game are you playing, Moretti?" His voice echoed through the estate. "You come to my wedding, dance with my fiancée, and then pretend nothing happened?" Luca slowly faced him. The silence that followed felt heavier than shouting. "I'm not here for your wedding." "Then why are you here?" Luca didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted across the guests, across the musicians, across the waiters carrying silver trays. Finally, his eyes settled on Olivia. "For the only person here who doesn't know she's already dead." The courtyard froze. Olivia felt every pair of eyes turn toward her. "What?" She barely recognized her own voice. Marco laughed harshly. "This is another one of your mind games." Luca ignored him. He kept looking only at Olivia. "How long have you been planning weddings?" 9 years. "Parents?" "My mother passed away. My father died when I was 12. His expression didn't change. "Did they?" The question struck harder than any slap. "What is that supposed to mean?" "You've been asking the wrong questions your entire life." Before she could demand an explanation, the sound of helicopter blades rolled across the Tuscan hills. Everyone looked toward the sky. A black helicopter appeared above the vineyards. Not police, no markings. Just another piece moving exactly on schedule. Guests began screaming. Some rushed toward the mansion. Others hid beneath tables. Champagne glasses shattered across the stone terrace. Marco's bodyguards drew their weapons. Moretti's men instantly formed a defensive circle around their boss. Chaos erupted in seconds. Only Luca remained perfectly still. He glanced toward the rooftops, then quietly said one word. "Now." Every Moretti bodyguard moved at once. Smoke grenades exploded across the courtyard. White smoke swallowed the wedding in an instant. People screamed blindly. Children cried. Gunfire erupted somewhere beyond the haze. Not wild shooting, disciplined bursts. Professional. Olivia covered her ears as bullets cracked overhead. She couldn't see anything, only shadows moving through the smoke. Someone grabbed her wrist. She instinctively pulled away. "Let me go. It's me, Luca." His grip was firm but controlled. "We're leaving. I'm not going anywhere with you. You have exactly 7 seconds before every sniper opens fire. I don't even know you." "No, you don't." He pulled her behind a marble column, just as a bullet shattered the fountain where she had been standing seconds earlier. Stone fragments exploded through the air. Olivia gasped. Another shot, then another. Each one landed exactly where she had been. Not random. Someone really was trying to kill her. Luca shielded her with his own body as more rounds struck the columns around them. Dust filled the air. She looked up at him. "You knew. I hoped I was wrong. You brought this here." "No." His voice hardened for the first time. "I came because this was already here." A violent explosion rocked the far side of the estate. Flames erupted near the front gate. Several luxury cars caught fire. Guests ran in every direction. Marco Bellini shouted orders lost beneath the gunfire. Sophia was nowhere to be seen. Neither were half the security guards. Everything was falling apart. Luca pressed a hand against Olivia's shoulder. "Listen carefully. This wedding ended before the first guest arrived." "What are you talking about?" "It was never a wedding. It was an execution." Her mouth went dry. "For who?" He looked at her with an intensity that made the noise around them disappear. "For the last heir." "I don't understand." "You will, but not here." He reached for her hand. For a brief second, his fingers stopped just short of touching hers, as if crossing that final inch meant admitting something he refused to admit. Then another bullet tore through the column beside them. The hesitation vanished. He seized her hand and pulled her into the smoke. They ran through hidden garden paths behind the estate. Olivia's lungs burned. Gunfire echoed behind them. Helicopter blades thundered overhead. Somewhere in the distance, church bells began ringing across the Tuscan hills. As they reached an old stone archway leading into the vineyards, Luca suddenly stopped. His expression changed. Not fear, calculation. He slowly turned toward a weathered chapel overlooking the estate. Standing in the doorway, an elderly man in a white suit watched them without moving. He smiled, raised a silver cane, and gave the smallest nod. Luca's face lost every trace of calm. For the first time since arriving, the feared Mafia Boss looked genuinely shaken. He whispered only 4 words. "He's supposed to be dead. He's supposed to be dead." The words barely left Luca Moretti's lips before the old man lowered his silver cane and disappeared back into the shadows of the abandoned chapel. Olivia turned toward him. "You know him?" Luca didn't answer. He simply tightened his grip around her wrist, not painfully, but firmly enough to make it clear that hesitation could get them both killed. "We're leaving. I'm done following orders. You'll have plenty of time to hate me later. I already do." A single gunshot shattered the silence. The stone wall beside Olivia exploded into fragments. Luca reacted instantly, pulling her behind an ancient olive tree as another round sliced through the air where her head had been a heartbeat earlier. "They're closing the perimeter," he said quietly. "You sound like you've expected this all day." "I've expected it for 22 years. Olivia stared at him. Before she could demand an explanation, Luca pressed the tiny earpiece he had slipped into her hand against her palm. "Put it on." "No. You don't trust me." "Should I?" "No." The honesty caught her off guard. "But trust my enemies even less." Another burst of automatic gunfire echoed from the estate behind them. Smoke rose above the vineyards. Wedding guests screamed, somewhere in the distance. The elegant celebration Olivia had spent 18 months creating had become a battlefield in less than 10 minutes. She looked back. "This is my fault." "No." Luca's voice remained calm. "It was never your wedding to lose." He led her through rows of towering cypress trees until the chapel disappeared behind the hills. The farther they walked, the quieter everything became. Only the distant sound of helicopters disturbed the evening air. Olivia finally pulled free from his grasp. "I'm not taking another step until you tell me what's happening." Luca stopped. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The fading Tuscan sunset painted the vineyards in deep gold, making the silence feel strangely beautiful despite the chaos surrounding them. Finally, he looked at her. "Have you ever wondered why you have no photographs from before you were 5? Her heartbeat stumbled. "What?" "You heard me. I had a house fire. So you've always been told. My father wasn't your father." The sentence struck harder than any bullet. Olivia instinctively stepped backward. Don't lie to me. I'm trying to stop everyone else from doing exactly that." She shook her head. "No. My father raised me. He loved you. That part was real. But he didn't bring you into this world." Tears threatened to rise, but anger forced them back. "You expect me to believe this because you're a mafia boss. I expect you to question why no birth certificate exists before your 5th birthday." Her expression froze. She had searched for it once. Years ago, her father had claimed the original documents were destroyed in the fire. She had accepted the explanation. Now, for the first time, she wasn't sure she believed it. Luca noticed the change immediately. "You've started remembering." "I don't remember anything." "You remember enough." Before she could answer, voices echoed through the vineyard. 3 armed men emerged between the rows of grapevines. Not Moretti soldiers. Their suits were lighter, their weapons different. Professional. One of them smiled. "There they are." Olivia instinctively stepped behind Luca. He noticed. His expression never changed. "You finally figured out who's dangerous." "I figured out who's carrying the gun." A faint smile almost appeared. Almost. The 3 men spread out, cutting off every escape route. The leader removed his sunglasses. "Mr. Moretti, we appreciate you bringing her." "I wasn't bringing her." "No?" The man chuckled. "It certainly saved us time." Olivia looked between them. "You know each other?" "We've met," Luca answered without taking his eyes off the gunman. "Unfortunately, they survived." The leader laughed. "Still arrogant. You've lost half your empire, and yet you're still standing." "I've been standing longer than you'll live." The man's smile disappeared. He raised his pistol. "Henheo." "No. You understand the consequences." "I do. You'll start another war." "I ended one." The silence became razor-sharp. Olivia whispered, "Who are they?" Without looking away, Luca answered, "The family that should have died with its king." The leader sighed. "That's the problem with ghosts. They never stay buried." Gunfire erupted without warning. Not from the men. From somewhere beyond the vineyard. 3 precise shots. The first gunman collapsed instantly. The second barely had time to turn before another bullet dropped him into the dirt. The leader dove behind a stone wall. "Sniper." Olivia instinctively crouched. Luca didn't. He calmly scanned the surrounding hills, then muttered something under his breath. "No, not him." Another rifle shot echoed. The leader's weapon flew from his hand. A warning shot. Not a kill. Whoever the sniper was, he wanted them alive. Luca suddenly grabbed Olivia's shoulder. "Run." "What about?" "Run." She didn't argue this time. Together, they sprinted deeper into the vineyard, while bullets cracked through branches overhead. The mysterious sniper continued firing with impossible precision, forcing every attacker into cover without killing them, almost as if he wasn't protecting Luca, he was protecting Olivia. After several exhausting minutes, they reached an abandoned stone farmhouse hidden between the hills. The wooden door hung crookedly from rusted hinges. Inside, dust covered every surface. A fireplace stood cold beneath a faded family portrait whose faces had long since disappeared. Luca locked the door. Only then did he finally allow himself to breathe. Olivia watched him carefully. The calm Mafia Boss from the wedding was gone. Not frightened, not broken, but carrying a weight she couldn't yet understand. She noticed fresh blood running down his left sleeve. "You've been shot. It's nothing. It isn't nothing." She walked toward him. He instinctively stepped back. "I said I'm fine, and I'm saying you're bleeding." For several silent seconds they stared at each other. Then, without another word, Olivia opened the old medical cabinet hanging on the wall. Most of it was empty, except for a roll of bandages and a nearly forgotten bottle of antiseptic. She picked them up. "Sit down. I don't take orders." She met his eyes without flinching. "Neither do I." For the first time since they met, Luca Moretti obeyed. Luca lowered himself onto the edge of an old wooden chair without another word. The farmhouse fell silent except for the wind slipping through cracks in the stone walls. Olivia knelt in front of him, carefully cutting away the torn fabric around his shoulder. The bullet had only grazed him, but blood had soaked through the sleeve of his tailored jacket. "You call this nothing. I've had worse. I don't doubt that." She poured antiseptic onto a clean cloth. The sting made the muscles in his jaw tighten, but he never flinched. "You don't even react. I learned a long time ago that pain doesn't negotiate." Olivia paused. "For someone who says he wants to end all of this, you still talk like a soldier." Luca looked into the dying fire inside the fireplace. "Some wars keep speaking long after they're over." She wrapped the fresh bandage around his shoulder with practiced hands. "You've done this before. I volunteered with emergency response teams in college. You stayed calm today. I was terrified. You hid it well. So did you." For the first time since the wedding, silence settled between them without fear. Olivia noticed the faint scar crossing the back of his hand. It wasn't the scar of someone who enjoyed violence. It was the scar of someone who had survived it. Before she could ask about it, a quiet voice crackled through the earpiece resting on the table. "Luca." He immediately reached for it. "Report. The estate is gone. What about the guests? They're being evacuated by local authorities. The bride and groom, alive." Luca closed his eyes for a brief moment. "And Romano?" "A pause." He disappeared before our team reached the chapel. Olivia looked up. "The old man." Luca nodded. "You know his name?" I hoped I'd never hear it again. He removed the earpiece. For several seconds he seemed to debate whether to tell her the truth. Finally, he spoke. 22 years ago, a council of powerful families decided they were finished living under fear. They created a network to dismantle organized crime from the inside. You were part of it? My father was. And Romano? He betrayed everyone. The room suddenly felt colder. He sold the names of every family that resisted the old syndicates. People disappeared. Witnesses. Judges. Children. Olivia felt her stomach tighten. My family. Luca met her eyes. Your parents were among the few who escaped. You said the man who raised me wasn't my father. He wasn't. He was one of the people trusted to hide you. She slowly sat down across from him. So, who were my parents? Luca hesitated. I don't know their names, but I know what they protected. What? You. Before she could ask another question, headlights swept across the farmhouse windows. Both of them froze. Someone had found them. Luca extinguished the lantern in one swift movement. Darkness swallowed the room. He motioned for Olivia to stay back. Outside, gravel crunched beneath slow footsteps. One vehicle. No shouting, no gunfire. Just a single engine idling in the distance. Olivia whispered, Is it Romano? I don't think so. How can you tell? He never comes alone. The front door creaked. Someone knocked. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. Again. 3 knocks. Luca frowned. That's impossible. What? That signal hasn't been used in 20 years. He approached the door cautiously. Instead of opening it, he spoke through the wood. Who sent you? An older voice answered. Someone who owes your father his life. Luca remained perfectly still. The stranger continued. If you're still carrying the silver compass, open the door. Olivia looked at Luca. You have a compass? Without answering, he reached inside his jacket and pulled out an antique silver compass hanging from a worn leather cord. Its surface was scratched with age. He had carried it all along. Slowly, he unlocked the door. An elderly priest stepped inside, rainwater dripping from his black coat. He wasn't armed. He carried only a weathered leather satchel. His eyes settled on Olivia. So, you're alive. She instinctively stepped back. You know me. I knew your mother. The words stole every breath from the room. The priest carefully opened the satchel and removed a sealed envelope, yellowed with time. Across the front, written in elegant handwriting, were 6 simple words. For Olivia, when she learns the truth. Her hands trembled as she accepted it. It's been waiting for 22 years, the priest said quietly. Your mother made me promise I would deliver it only if Luca Moretti was standing beside you. Olivia looked from the envelope to Luca. You knew about this? His expression revealed genuine surprise. No. I've spent 2 decades trying to find that letter. The priest gave a faint, sorrowful smile. Then your search is over. A deafening explosion suddenly shook the farmhouse. Glass shattered inward. The lantern crashed to the floor. Luca threw himself between Olivia and the window just as bullets ripped through the stone wall. The envelope slipped from her hands and landed beneath the broken table. Outside, engines roared. Not 1, not 2. En un tir convoi. Black headlights surrounded the farmhouse from every direction. The priest looked through the shattered window and quietly whispered. They found us. Luca drew a steady breath. They didn't find us. He helped Olivia to her feet, without taking his eyes off the approaching vehicles. They followed the letter. For the first time, Olivia understood. She had never been running from the past. The past had been waiting for her to uncover it, and now that it had, there would be no hiding from what came next. The farmhouse shook again. A second explosion tore through the eastern wall, sending centuries-old stone crashing across the wooden floor. Dust filled the air. Olivia instinctively reached for the sealed envelope, but Luca caught her wrist before her fingers touched it. Not yet. They came for this. They came for what's inside your head after you read it. Outside, engines idled in perfect formation. No shouting. No random gunfire. Whoever surrounded the farmhouse was disciplined enough to wait. That frightened Luca more than the bullets. He crossed to the shattered window and studied the headlights scattered across the hillside. 12 vehicles, he said quietly. No, 13. The elderly priest closed his eyes. He never travels with fewer than 13. Olivia looked between them. Who? The priest answered before Luca could. Romano doesn't lead an army. He collects survivors. He convinces desperate men that loyalty can erase guilt, and every one of them would die before letting him lose. Luca reached beneath the broken staircase and lifted an old wooden hatch hidden beneath decades of dust. Olivia frowned. There's a tunnel? Every farmhouse on this estate was connected during the war. You knew? I hoped I'd never need it. The priest smiled faintly. Your grandfather insisted every family build one. Olivia stopped. My grandfather? The priest nodded. The one you never knew. Before another question could form, a calm voice echoed from outside through a loudspeaker. Luca, you've spent 22 years running from ghosts. It's time to stop. Olivia recognized the voice immediately. The old man from the chapel. Romano. Luca didn't answer. The voice continued. You still protect people who cannot save you. I admire your consistency. Luca finally spoke. You murdered everyone who trusted you. A soft laugh drifted through the broken windows. I simply chose the winning side. The words settled over the farmhouse like ice. Olivia looked at Luca. He's trying to make you angry. I know, so don't let him. Luca turned toward her. For the first time since they met, the controlled mask he always wore slipped just enough for her to see the exhaustion beneath it. I'm not angry. I'm afraid. She stared at him. You? He nodded once. Not for myself. For you. The confession hung between them. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, honest, and somehow that made it infinitely more powerful. The priest carefully picked up the envelope from beneath the overturned table and placed it in Olivia's hands. Whatever happens next, don't let anyone else open this. She looked down at her name, written across the yellowed paper. The ink had faded, but the handwriting carried unmistakable care. A mother's hand. The moment she touched the wax seal, another explosion thundered outside. The front door burst inward. Splinters flew across the room. Silhouettes appeared through the smoke. Not firing, not rushing, waiting. Then Romano himself stepped through the ruined doorway, leaning lightly on his silver cane as though arriving for dinner rather than an armed siege. His eyes never left Olivia. So, he said with a faint smile, after all these years, you look exactly like your mother. Romano smiled as though he had walked into a family reunion. Smoke drifted through the shattered doorway behind him. The men surrounding the farmhouse held their positions, waiting for a single command. Olivia instinctively stepped backward, the sealed envelope pressed tightly against her chest. You know my mother? She asked. Romano's smile widened. I knew exactly how brave she was, and exactly how stubborn. Luca shifted in front of Olivia, quietly placing himself between her and the doorway. Don't listen to him. I've listened to lies for 22 years, Olivia replied without taking her eyes off Romano. I deserve the truth. So you do, Romano answered. But truth is expensive. He tapped the silver cane against the wooden floor. I came to offer you a choice. Luca's voice turned cold. You never offer choices. You manufacture them. Romano ignored him. Open the letter. Walk away from Luca. And I promise, no one else dies today. The farmhouse fell silent. Olivia looked down at the envelope. Its wax seal had survived explosions, fire, and decades of hiding. Her fingers trembled. Luca didn't try to stop her. Instead, he quietly said, whatever is inside, let it be your mother's voice, not his. She carefully broke the seal. Inside rested a single handwritten letter and an old photograph. The photograph showed a smiling couple holding a little girl no older than 3. Standing beside them was a much younger Luca. Not in a suit, not surrounded by guards, just a frightened teenager with tired eyes. Olivia looked up in disbelief. You knew me. Luca nodded slowly. I remembered your laugh. She unfolded the letter. The handwriting was elegant, despite the faded ink. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading, never believe that power makes someone good or evil. Only the choices they make. The young man standing beside us in this photograph once risked everything to save you. If he is still with you today, it means he never stopped. Tears blurred Olivia's vision. She continued reading. Our family never wanted revenge. We wanted freedom. If one day you have the chance to end this cycle, choose mercy over hatred. That is how our family survives. The letter slipped slightly in her hands. For years she had imagined discovering a hidden fortune, a secret inheritance, a list of enemies. Instead, her mother had left her a single request: end the violence. Romano sighed dramatically. Beautiful words. Very disappointing. He slowly raised a small remote control. You see, I prepared for sentiment. Luca's eyes narrowed. What is that? A reminder? He pressed a button. Somewhere beneath the farmhouse, a low mechanical hum echoed through the stone foundation. The elderly priest's face turned pale. The tunnels. Romano nodded. I filled them with explosives before you arrived. Olivia's heart stopped. If we stay, they collapse. If we run, my men are waiting. He smiled almost kindly. So, which future would you prefer? Luca took one careful step forward. You always mistake fear for victory. No, I understand people. They protect what they love. And today, you finally love something more than revenge. For the first time, Romano wasn't looking at Olivia. He was studying Luca, trying to measure how far he would go. Luca quietly removed the silver compass from around his neck. He looked at it for several seconds. My father carried this. Then he gave it to me. It reminded me where home was. He placed it gently into Olivia's hands. Keep it. She stared at him. What are you doing? The support columns are beneath the western tunnel. If someone doesn't release the manual locks, the explosion will bring down the entire hillside. No, she already knew what he intended. No. Luca smiled for the first time. It wasn't triumphant. It wasn't fearless. It was peaceful. You once asked why I came to the wedding. I think you know now. He turned before she could stop him. Olivia grabbed his sleeve. I'm not losing another family. The words hung in the air. Luca slowly looked back. Family. No one had ever called him that. Not in years. The priest stepped beside them. You don't have to do this alone. Luca shook his head. Yes, I do. The old priest placed a weathered key into Luca's hand. Then, finish what your father started. Luca disappeared into the underground passage. Seconds later, alarms echoed beneath the farmhouse. Romano's confident expression finally cracked. What did he do? The priest smiled. He changed the ending. A deafening rumble shook the valley. Instead of collapsing inward, the hidden tunnels redirected the blast through abandoned escape routes built decades earlier. The hillside erupted with dust. The shockwave overturned vehicles surrounding the farmhouse. Romano lost his footing. His silver cane rolled across the broken floor. For the first time in decades, he looked afraid. Police helicopters appeared over the vineyards. Then another, and another. Searchlights swept across the estate. Romano glanced toward the sky. You called them. Luca's voice echoed from the tunnel entrance behind him. No, you did. The moment you believed no one else would. Covered in dust but still standing, Luca emerged from the tunnel. His shoulder was bleeding again. His suit was torn, but the small smile in his eyes remained. Romano looked around. His convoy was surrounded. His escape routes were gone. The men who had followed him for years slowly lowered their weapons. Not because they were defeated, because they were tired. One after another they stepped away. The cycle that had ruled generations finally began to break. Wegslater. The Tuscan estate looked very different. The burned gardens had been restored. Children ran through the vineyards, where armed convoys once stood. The abandoned chapel had become a memorial, honoring those who had protected innocent families instead of power. Olivia stood beneath the same olive trees, where terror had first found her. She held the silver compass in one hand, and her mother's letter in the other. Footsteps approached. Luca stopped beside her. No bodyguards? She asked. They finally accepted that I don't need an army to keep one promise. She smiled. And what's that promise? He looked across the hills glowing beneath the evening sun. To build something no one has to fear. Olivia slipped her hand into his. This time, neither of them hesitated. The wind carried the sound of distant church bells across Tuscany. The wedding that had never truly begun had become something far more meaningful. Not the union of two powerful families, but the end of a legacy built on fear, and the quiet beginning of one built on trust. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't defeating your enemies. Sometimes it's refusing to become them.